Yo, what is up, NBA and basketball fans? When you ask the average person what teams they're excited for in the upcoming NBA season, you'll get an answer like Golden State, New York, and Cleveland. One of those generic answers. But today I'm going to be talking about 5 teams that people are sleeping on and they need to freaking wake up. I had to talk about my Pistons in one of these lists. If you don't follow the Pistons, yo, I get it. I get while you're sleeping on this team. You have no idea what's in store for you guys next season. You look at the roster they have and you look at what they did this offseason. They signed Ish Smith, John Lure, and Boban Jovanovic. You look at how they were 8th place last year and got swept by the Cleveland Cavaliers. And then you look at what they added this offseason and you're like, did they even get better, yo? Well, yes, they got better. Yes, they got freaking better. Last year, they didn't have a bench. Last year, they had the rookie Stanley Johnson and Steve freaking Blake coming off the bench. I wouldn't expect you guys to know that the Pistons had the 2nd best starting 5 according to all these statistical things in the NBA last year. I wouldn't expect the average NBA fan to know that. You know, I knew that. I looked it up. With the Pistons, continuity is something that they haven't had since the group in 04. Internal growth is something that I believe this team is going to do extremely well this season. You have a bunch of young guys like Reggie Jackson, KCP, Stanley Johnson, Andre Drummond, Tobias Harris that are still getting better, and that they will get better together and develop chemistry and eventually become a championship contender within the next couple of years. I was having a hard time including them on this list, not because I don't think they're gonna be good, but because I'm amazed that people are still sleeping on the Boston Celtics. Last year, what were they in, like a 4-way tie for the 3rd best record in the East? No more, it's the East. It's not hard in the East, it's hard out here in the East. Anyways, they were tied for the 3rd best record in the East last year, and they got better this year by signing Al Horford, one of the most sought-after free agents this summer. Also, they drafted a potential Rookie of the Year candidate in Jaylen Brown. And of course, you have Isaiah Thomas, who's gonna come back better next year. You still have people like Jay Crowder. You still have Marcus Smart, who if he can just develop a freaking jump shot and stop flopping around everywhere, could be actually a pretty good player in the NBA. Avery Bradley, who said in this offseason that he's committing himself to defense and he wants to win Defensive Player of the Year. On top of that, they have the potential and trade assets to bring in another star before the trade deadline. You have picks for days and young talent for days. That's all you need in the trade market to land a star player. This is another team like the Celtics who I had a hard time including on this list just because I don't know how people are still sleeping on Paul George. You have Paul George on an actually good team. On paper at least, I feel that this team at least is more talented than the team that Paul George used to compete with, the Miami Heat, a couple of years ago. On top of that, Paul George will be a better player than he was a couple of years ago when the Pacers almost beat their Miami Heat. And yet, people still don't want to recognize this team as probably one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference next year. The Pacers have an offense now. Last year, what was their offense? Get the ball to Paul George. That was their offense. Monte Ellis, I think, will have a bounce back year. You look, last year he averaged like 13 points per game, which is the fewest since his rookie season. And it's not like he's super old, yo. He's 30. He still has some good years left. Now they have a new coach, most likely a new system. So, you know, he might do better in this system than he did last year. Just stop sleeping on this team. Probably the most slept on team in the history of being slept on. Other than Jazz fans, nobody wants to acknowledge the Utah Jazz as a good team. They barely missed the playoffs last year. They missed it by 1 game, and it came down to the final game of the season where Kobe dropped 60 and the Houston Rockets managed to comeback win. All the Jazz needed was some more offense. They are already one of the best defensive teams in the league. You're gonna have Rodney Hood along with Gordon Hayward are 2 of the most slept on players in the NBA. You also got Joe Johnson, who will have some nice scoring off the bench. You got George Hill, who can at least probably give you a solid 13 points at the point guard position. Boris Diaw, who may not score a lot, he is a great offensive catalyst as a big man. And you still have Rudy Gobert, who's going to deny anything that comes close to the rim. The Utah Jazz are going to be one of the most well-rounded teams in the NBA. Honestly, I also feel like they're going to be one of the most frustrating teams to play against in the NBA next year because I never liked watching Jazz games. I'm going to be honest with you guys. But that doesn't mean they're not going to be a great team. Some of the best teams in the NBA were never the best teams to watch. If you look at the 04 Pistons, you weren't going to see a lot of scoring in those games, but they still won an NBA championship, didn't they? I struggled with this one a lot. I can understand why people are sleeping on this team. They deserve to be slept on. They were the most disappointing team in the NBA last year. The year before that, they went to the Western Conference Finals and almost went to the NBA Finals, and then they barely scraped by into the 8th seed of the West last year, with basically the exact same roster they had the year before that. But for the same reason, I also feel that they could be a much better team this year. When something like that happens, when a team just completely falls off the map with the same roster, you have to look internally and find the problem, because that's all it could be, is some chemistry issues, and everyone knew what those chemistry issues were. James Harden versus Dwight Howard. Dwight Howard is gone, which will help the chemistry. Addition through subtraction. But they also added a couple of players. Brian Anderson and Eric Gordon, who, if healthy, if these two freaking injury-prone players can remain healthy, could provide some nice offense for the Houston Rockets. Offense. The Houston Rockets will be one of the best offensive teams next year. Defense might be another story. Defense leads us to James Harden. He's not a good defensive player, but that does not mean he is not a great player. He is still one of the best players in the NBA. And if you think that just because he refuses to play defense means otherwise, then what's wrong with you? Offensively, he does absolutely everything for the Houston Rockets. And I know I did not include him in my top 5 players to win MVP, just because I am so unsure of the Houston Rockets and if there will be a good enough team to get James Harden that MVP award. That could easily change. Remember that this team was the second best team in the West a couple of years ago. They got rid of the problem and added some more talent. And I can't wait to see if it does. Hope you guys enjoyed this video and smack that like button if you did. Also, comment down below the team you think people are sleeping on the most down in the comment section, along with why. And remember to keep getting the bucks, Team SDC, and I'm gonna catch you guys in the next one. Peace!